What's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer, bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, the volatility continues over here in the cryptocurrency market. Obviously, a ton of green. Look over there at the right side of the screen. Almost everything is in double-digit green. However, if we look over here at Bitcoin, we can see that price has kind of whipsawed right back down to the low that was set back there on June 18th. With Bitcoin at 17,400, 17,500. Prices had a pop this morning, not just in crypto, but in the stock market as well, as core CPI and CPI came in better than expected. Inflation showing signs of cooling, with the Dow Jones ripping up 788 points right now prior to the market opening. So we're seeing stock market crush it, now up over 800 points. But of course, crypto plagued with its own issues with the fall of FTX, which yesterday I had pointed out that we were seeing that Tether was starting to slowly lose its peg. It had only dropped down about 1/10 of a cent. However, today we've seen steam pick up in here and Tether's depeg has gotten further, at one point being down to 97 cents for each USDT. By now, I assume most people have heard everything with FTX, but the general idea of it, they were playing funky games with their balance sheet between FTX and Alameda, using the FTT token as collateral, and with it being used to collateralize loans, falling from $22 all the way to $1. Not exactly great. The second the support broke here for FTT, all the insanity picked up. Binance offered to buy out FTX so long as things looked okay on their balance sheet. Less than 24 hours later, they said, nope, we don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Coinbase said the same. They seem to have already known there was probably problems there. Justin Sun from Tron has been over there talking about that he's trying to work something out with FTX. Who knows if it is? But if you look at the Tron price chart everywhere, it's about 5 to 6 cents. However, over there on FTX, as people are locked in their exchanges over there, TRX ended up hitting as high as $2.50 on their exchange. So we're seeing just wonky things happen in the market, while Tether is once again lost its peg. So while we're still in the thick of this moment, a lot of uncertainty out there. We don't even know what the fallout is of third parties who are involved in all of this, what collateral damage is there going to be that happens from all of this. We're just going to look at the charts of how they look right now. You know, the fact that Tether is gaining a bunch of steam, depegging, Bitcoin has set a new low. I'm definitely not going to be coming on here and screaming, the bottom is in, but we'll look at a lot of different things that are happening in here. Some of them, look okay. Some of them definitely don't look okay. But I'm just going to try to present it to you the way I see it. And then, you determine whether or not there's any validity or valid arguments to any of it. One of the things that we have right here is we have the crypto market cap, or the altcoin market cap. So this includes the entire altcoin market, excluding Bitcoin. One of the things we've looked at monitoring in here has been for Wyckoff accumulation, right? And to look for a spring. Has a spring come in significantly early? One thing to notice here is that the altcoin market has held the lows. Now go back and look and see what the spring looked like for the altcoin market back in 2019 and 2020. Here is your spring right back down into the lows. If you notice how we bounce off the lows, come in here, and then wham, in for your spring without hitting a new low. So technically speaking, that could still be in play. Gamble to say that, and almost feels borderline dumb to say something like that with Tether just getting it going on its depeg. What are the consequences of that? I don't know. And we're only a few days into all the chaos that has happened here within here. So keeping that in mind, but if we were just looking at this from a chart perspective and did not think about anything else going out in the markets, right? If we didn't think of any of that other stuff, which, unfortunately, it sounds like we probably kind of have to a little bit. But if we removed all thoughts of everything else going on in the move, one would say, hey, it seems like a spring. Typically in springs, you do have a lot of scare and a lot of fear, and that's the mark of your bottom. It's one last attempt to just slam back down into the bottom and crush it. Well, hey, the altcoin market has held its low so far. Obviously, not every altcoin has, right? You have many that have broken into massive new lows. You have a lot that have not. When you're looking back there at those June lows, you have a lot that have held them, a lot that haven't. We can go through this list here, and you see things like Matic that is still holding it, Ethereum Classic that is still holding it, Cosmos, Doge, Ethereum, Uniswap, Litecoin, XRP, QNT, Link, Binance Coin, Monero, Tron. Well, then you got things like FTT, right? And you have things that have barely set new lows like Algo. But then you have things like Solana that have drastically. But for the most part, the altcoin market has held from a market cap standpoint with a bottoming structure with a slam back down into the lows. And we were talking about this last week that, or maybe it was earlier this week, I don't know, it's been a blur. That in Wyckoff accumulations, we could see these highs get set, but we can also see them come in short in here to go in for it. Just where would that level come in at? Well, we got some timed news to come in, it seems, right after hitting the 200-day moving average as CZ Binance gets the ball rolling. So you look at it from this perspective and you say, okay, there's the potential that we just had the biggest scare narrative possible. This one right here, this is C19, right? We slammed down into there. The stock market's crashing like crazy. People are scared to leave their houses. People are in lockdowns. It's just unbelievably bad, right? But what happens? That's the bottom after slamming right back down into it. So at this point, we're at that moment right now for the altcoin market. So if you want a piece of hope, if you want a piece of optimism out there, so long as this low is still holding in here, it is possible. We just had our violent, aggressive spring taking us back down to the lows, and it was able to hold here for the altcoin market, just like we've seen it past bottoms. Obviously, this video put out 4 days ago prior to all of this happening with FTX and CZ Binance and FTT token. We've been spending a long time talking about Wyckoff accumulation and talking about a wham right back down into the lows at some point for the total market cap excluding Bitcoin or the altcoin market. So the fact that we've seen something like that right now, from a technical standpoint, everything would still remain intact in regards to still holding that previous high from 2017 and 2018 as a supportive level right now. In addition, you have the 50 and the 100-week moving averages, which have already crossed themselves as we did back in 2018 and as we saw for Bitcoin in 2018-19 and in 2014-15. That was marking the lows. Afterwards, it slammed back down into the lows, and then things got really exciting afterwards, right? So technically speaking, considering that the altcoin market held its low, it is acting just like what happened during the final spring phase of Wyckoff accumulation, and it did not set a new low. That is optimistic to see. In addition, lots of altcoins are still maintaining those lows. Lots are not, but collectively, when we look at the whole group, this is similar to what happens in a spring phase for the final ending. Everyone gets scared. Nobody wants to touch it. Then what happens? It's a grueling, grinding period after that. So that's kind of like expectations. If this did just hit right here, and if this was the spring, it would still be a grinding period of worry for a while. But to see these kind of overlaid with each other, here's our current time period from June all the way through November here in 2022. Here is 2019 for the altcoin market. And this was the Wyckoff accumulation that took place down in there. Here we are currently right now with a big, massive slam back down into the lows. So when it comes to just looking at this chart and where it's at this exact moment, is there a reason to be optimistic? It seems like it. But now let's move on to all the other things. First thing is, from the very top of Bitcoin, we were saying, look, this looks like it's the top of Bitcoin. And we started following a bear market fractal deep within Bitcoin, kind of having these pauses along the way, long pause out here within here for Bitcoin. But there was always kind of this one little missing piece of the fractal that was happening down in here. Have we finally gotten that moment to show up in there? It's a big stretch to sit there and say that. When, from my perspective, I think it's a big stretch to say that. But, it is what it is if you're just going to kind of go with that, right? You had all the phases happen in here, and then just it paused out ridiculously long in here. Then did it finally go down in for its final phase, which would indicate probably still, hover here for a few days and then one more dip just a little bit lower. But in the end, still being just exactly what it should have been this whole time. But when we move beyond that and we don't look at this fractal any longer, we start to say, okay, things are really acting differently for Bitcoin in here based on how Bitcoin has behaved throughout all of history. One of those things being, well, let's look at the 200-week moving average. First of all, we're just distancing ourselves away from the 200-week moving average. For a bullish trend in Bitcoin, we can see how it has behaved with that. So you get underneath it, okay, fine. But to go ahead and spend this much time, nearly 5 to 6 months underneath of it, and then you go take another step away, it's a little concerning for Bitcoin. You look back to also how the past behavior was of these bottoms, is that after a capitulative ending coming in here, once the 50-week and the 100-week had crossed, you went into Wyckoff accumulation, and then that was the end of it. Started ramping itself back up. We could see that moment happened happened way back over here. So this is the first time that we've had Bitcoin go set a new low after something like that. We can also see the monthly RSI still just continues to point downward. So going back to when the past bottoms have come in, by the time a big capitulative move happens and the monthly RSI has dipped down to the 40s, getting very close to 40, that was the end of it back in here, and then just waddled and then onward. Well, we got down here to this level. We went below our RSI that we have in the past, sideways for several months, and then now we're dipping down even further. So that is different from past bottoms for Bitcoin. And then looking at the MACD, we see that it's still just pointing down here on the monthly time frame. We have flipped here on the MACD, and in each circumstance in the past when that had occurred, the bottom was already marked in there from March 2015. We can see the bottom was already marked in there, and then heading over here to 2019, February 2019, by the time that happened, the bottom was already marked in. So another indicator that is not in consistency with the past behavior for Bitcoin. So not only the 50-week and the 100-week crossing, not only the 200-week acting as support, but also the monthly RSI and the monthly MACD. Bitcoin's not behaving in consistency with the past for its price action. Another issue for Bitcoin in particular is that this now makes this a 5-wave structure that is happening in here. So in each of Bitcoin's previous bear markets, what we end up having is ABC corrections. So you have an A, B, C correction, and then you have an A, B, C correction. Both of them falling 70%, bouncing 100%, and then going on for the capitulative ending. We do not have an ABC correction happening in here for Bitcoin. So price action behavior is not acting like an ABC correction. Indicator behavior is not acting like past ABC corrections, but price action is acting like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means you'd have to look at this thing on kind of a bigger time frame and be saying to yourself, well, has Bitcoin gone off into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and are we now doing a massive A, B, C correction? And that's easier to see. It sounds abstract to sit there and say, why would you put the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the way up right there? But you could see it better when we look at the BLX chart. So the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, take us back to when Bitcoin was 5 cents in here. If we don't account for these illiquid wicks that essentially take it to zero, but we're just looking at kind of the candle closes to work our way up in here, and we take this fractal that emerges in here, we could see that the second bull run for Bitcoin was of the same length and size of the first one. So the argument would be, hey, here's your first bull run, here's your second bull run, and then here's your third bull run. So why would we have it be that this is the third bull run and not count this one along the way? And that's because it would be of the same size and magnitude once again to work our way up here for another one, which if we take this bull run in here, right? So we've got our first run, which is of equal size of our second run. And we take our second run and set it up here. You can see that the pause that we had in here was of the same size right in here. And this whole pit stop that we had in here was just really still part of the same run up. And so essentially what you end up having is you have your first wave right in here, which is equivalent to your second wave. And then we go in for our third super cycle in here, and that's the same size. So we have cycle 1, cycle 2, and cycle 3, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so how do you behave in here afterwards on this scale? And that we can even look to Ethereum from back in here to see where it pulls back to. Right, here's our final accumulation. It's still within this wave, but we still pull back down into here, And we look at Elliott wave theory, and it shows that when we have bullish corrections, A, B, C corrections, like we're talking about on Bitcoin in 2014 and 2018, but once we start putting in 5-wave corrections to the downside, that we still have more to go. So if you hypothesize that that is the case for Bitcoin, that we have now just completed our third major super cycle, and our first wave down is unlike the ABCs that we've historically seen on the ride up, which, as we saw in Elliott wave theory, in a bull trend, we have ABC corrections in here from our peak, from our top. This is not an ABC correction. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's no bounce. In each circumstance of both of these ABC corrections that happened in here, you fell 70%, you bounced 100%, and then you went in for the final ending. Fell 70%, bounced 100%, went in for the final ending. There's been none of that happening in here for Bitcoin. And like we were just showing earlier, none of the indicators are acting the same as an ABC correction for that. Now, price action is very green today. The BLX, the one we're using, the Brave New Coin Liquid Index, this is showing yesterday's data. So yesterday we're at 15.8. Today we're right now at 17.7 for Bitcoin. So you can see this is what we're looking like today, but price behavior in here is unlike that of these. So that's what my argument has been for these last several months. All the people yelling for wanting 12 to 14K. The biggest problem you have with that is that these people yelling for 12 to 14K want to buy it for a new bull run. However, now that Bitcoin has set a new low, none of the price behavior mimics that of an ABC correction or of Bitcoin's bullish strength. It is now appearing as though Bitcoin itself is bearish on a very big time frame. And that doesn't mean that it can't just bounce from right here and say, that was it. That was good to go for Bitcoin. And then now it's time to march all the way up to $40,000. It's certainly possible. It's exactly what we saw happen for Ethereum. But what it would mean is that it's not mimicking that of what starts a new bull run. But then after that, we'd go head on down to about $3,000. And all would not be gloom and doom for the altcoin market or for the cryptocurrency market in general. It may just mean that Bitcoin is getting dethroned. That's not FUD. That's not me here to say I hate Bitcoin. I've been here long enough to know that Bitcoin has brought everything else to the party. But from a technical perspective, Bitcoin is not acting in line with how it's acted historically. However, the altcoin market is still holding up okay right now. And that the altcoin market is still maintaining its lows. And the altcoin market is acting like a Wyckoff accumulation to this point. Is S going to hit the fan and we're going to see massive fallout of massive companies and massive liquidations? You know what? That is still possibly in the cards right now. But right now, when we're just looking at charts and we dismiss all the other stuff going on out there and we are just looking at the altcoin market alone, it just did a spring potentially. All the phases are in here for the spring to end up happening, breaking out, all the grinding sideways, popping out, and then spring and aggressive right back to the lows and still maintaining it. So crazy. And if you need something to be optimistic about out there, we've been talking about Wyckoff accumulation for a long time. Looks like it came in a lot earlier than I would have expected. But hey, you know what? Aggressive fall, totally scary, totally holds the lows in here. And so far, it's okay. Problem is, we don't know what all the other fallout is going to be. But when you eliminate that and that alone, and you just look at this chart, you just think about the Wyckoff accumulation we've been talking about for several months, the altcoin market did it. The altcoin market has held so far. You look at how these things behave, yeah, a bounce, but it doesn't mean it would not come right back down once again, if it is. But so far, it's okay. The altcoin market actually didn't break in all of this. While Bitcoin appears to have, the altcoin market did not. And well, if you do want to believe in this fractal, and if you do want to believe price behavior would need to act the same way and go the same distance that it has ever since this thing started forming back there in October of last year, well, you know, maybe there's a little hope there for Bitcoin too. I'm not going to hang my hat on that for Bitcoin, but I will say seeing the altcoin market do just that when we've been spending weeks looking for something like that to emerge gives me a little bit of hope. Even though I know there's a lot of craziness out there and I don't know what the impacts of it will be. As a person who just looks at charts, it's the main thing that I do. I study charts and look at them. This gives me some sense of hope. And now, I've never seen these things just come down here like this and then we just shoot straight back up like that. That's not what my personal expectations would be. My hopes would be that we come back down here. There's still even room for it to come back down even lower. But even if it doesn't, I would still expect torture before it could work its way out. But that is what we see happen in situations like this. This would be kind of just like our initial pop right back out of there. But a good sign to see so far. Now we just need to kind of give this thing a couple of days to play out to see if there's any fallout that's coming afterwards. But otherwise, the more and more I look at this, the more optimistic and more excited I kind of get about it, even though it feels kind of dumb. It feels kind of dumb when we just don't even know what the fallout of FTX is going to be and how many things were impacted by it. As somebody who just looks at charts and sees these things and how much time we've spent talking about Wyckoff accumulation, well, you know what? We got the slam. It's held so far. For that, I'll hang my hat on optimism on that for sure. Because if things do play out similar to how this last accumulation schematic played out, it was a pretty good ride afterwards. So this will be the only video I can put out today. Yesterday, I ended up getting too busy. My daughter has a math test today that we had to spend a lot of time studying on. I'm a math guru. I'm more than willing to put my name on it and say I am a math guru. So we spent a ton of time working on that. We had to skip drum practice and piano practice yesterday in order to study math for her test today. But today we do have music stuff that we can't skip because we skipped yesterday. So I won't be able to put out a second video today, but if you're not following me over here on Twitter, follow me here at BC Backer, because I am trying to retweet things as they come out since the developments are all happening so fast. I've put a lot of stuff out here. Again, the NFTs on the XRP ledger are available. I have the link over there. Posting about CPI this morning that came in better than expected, talking about USDT that was slipping away from the $1 peg, talking about how crazy it is that we saw that the umpires had FTX plastered all over them during the World Series just a mere 4 days ago. Whether or not Sam Bankman-Fried is actually on the run right now, how FTX has a liquidity shortfall of up to $8 billion, and they're searching for emergency funding. Binance will not acquire FTX. So I'm trying to retweet everything big that comes out over here. So if you're not following me on Twitter, go ahead and follow me at BC Backer. And yeah, I'll keep stuff updated over there. And I'm going to assume that there's probably still going to be new stuff that gets shared out there today. So I'll be retweeting as much as I can. But all right, guys, that's going to be it for this one. Come on, altcoin market, make that be the spring. But all right, thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.